All right, guys. All right. We might as well kick it off right now. We will, start nice and slow. We will get into all of the details about Sundial and kind of bring you guys up to speed on all of the things we've been working on and building as of late. And then, we'll turn it over to Sam actually to also go over some of the technical details of what he's been helping to build out. And then, of course, finally, we'll then open the floor to all of you guys to kind of jump up and ask any questions you might have. This is basically, I think, one of the first like solely dedicated Sundial spaces we've ever done. We always do them usually in collaboration with other projects. Um, but we figured actually it's probably worthwhile to have one dedicated just to like the latest on what is happening with Sundial and bring you up to speed because we think it's pretty exciting. So, without further ado, I will kind of get right into things. We don't really have too much of a hard set agenda. But did want to kind of kick off by getting right into some of like the latest thinking about the project on the whole, and you just kind of grounding it. And so, how did we get here? Where is Sundial coming from? So, for many of you guys in the room, you're probably very familiar now with the whole narrative around Bitcoin DeFi. And obviously, this is a gigantic opportunity that numerous protocol projects, layer ones, and now also layer twos are all fighting to get involved in because the opportunity is gigantic. So, for those of you guys who aren't aware, like Bitcoin now being an almost $2 trillion in market cap layer one, it's by far the most dominant blockchain. But of course, we all know that it's not perfect. And we're now looking to find ways of, unlocking some of that liquidity to put to use elsewhere. And for quite some time now, since the later part of last year, we've been thinking about how best to get Cardano and Bitcoin to come together. And on the topic of opportunity, so some of you guys might be aware that with that massive, market cap of Bitcoin today, only less than 2% of Bitcoin that is currently circulating is involved in any form of DeFi. So the vast majority of Bitcoin is idle, and it's an enormous amount of funds. Of course, being proof of work, there are some limitations to what you can do with it. And of course, being that Bitcoin is not a smart contract protocol, it is just really a store of value. It is limited by its design. That hasn't stopped a lot of people from trying to give it a little bit more. And there are compromises here and there to do that. And so the latest thinking, and this is coming out of a lot of discussions we had last year with guys with Bitcoin OS, with Fluid Tokens, obviously the team at IOG, and many, many others, Marvin at Maestro, and many more. I could spend the whole night kind of listing people, but we've been now at it trying to put Cardano front and center as a fellow UTXO chain to partner up with Bitcoin without compromise. And that's like the big part here. There's so many Bitcoin layer twos, they have to make some kind of compromise one way or another. And we're looking to find a way to make the most of this collaboration between Bitcoin and Cardano without compromise, without needing to, against the wishes of the Bitcoin maxis, push something that would fundamentally alter the chain, right? So some of you might be aware of a proposal called LPCAT. There's a number of these proposals that would change Bitcoin's like a core code, and it might require a soft fork, and many people are opposed to this. So instead of counting on the miracle of changes to Bitcoin, let's see what we can do on the Cardano side to unlock the potential of Bitcoin. And of course, we need to be able to do this in such a way as to be, socially and marketably acceptable to the Bitcoin community. Um, we live in a tribal space, right? A lot of these various communities and a lot of the maxis don't want to be doing anything else. But we have now seen numerous projects elsewhere in the space use the tech of other blockchains to bring utility to Bitcoin, and it's worked. So I can think of, say, Stacks, Babylon. You can look at what's being done at ICP and the dexes that they're building there. So there's a number of examples where projects have been stood up with the back ends of different protocols, but looking to build into Bitcoin. And so that's what we'll be looking to do here. And some of like the most immediate things we want to do with Sundial and the tooling of Cardano is getting smart contracts and getting a layer 2 that's custom built to service Bitcoin interest. And so that is kind of the whole origin of Sundial, using the best of Cardano to plug into Bitcoin. And thankfully, we are really at a very interesting place where these two blockchains are mutually beneficial to each other, right? Bitcoin does not have smart contracts, and Cardano could use some more liquidity. And so by coming together, we can find a way to actually make it work. And so in the next couple of months ahead, we'll be releasing some of the first features on the Sundial protocol and the Sundial network. Ultimately, we are looking at probably an early 2026, so around like a Q1 launch of some of the layer 2 functionality. But between now and then, we're looking to roll out early protocols for Bitcoin DeFi. So some of the first stuff is around staking. I'll get into a little bit more on that later, because actually Sam's got a lot to talk about on that. But wanted to also kind of like bring you guys up to speed on where we're at actually in terms of the progress of everything. So beyond just kind of knowing the history and why we're doing this, it's important to say like how we got this all kicked off. And that's actually thanks to many of you who are here in the audience today. That's actually through Project Catalyst. So we got funded the very start of this year, actually. I guess you could say it was the very end of last year. So Fund 13 very graciously had enormous community support, even when we were counted out by a particular founding entity of Cardano. But don't need to get into politics, but we found a way to really rally the troops and get it all together. And so we're eternally thankful to the community for doing this for us. And since then, we've been powering away at the roadmap, going through the milestones and getting work done to get this product to market as soon as possible. We were talking about it last night in another Bitcoin DeFi space that was actually hosted by IOG. It's imperative that we understand that we're actually in a competition. We are in a race. There are others who want to be doing Bitcoin DeFi. And so we've got to be out here doing it better, doing it faster. And so there's a fire under our butts here at Sundial Protocol to get going. And so figured this space would be a great place to talk about what we've been doing. So some of the first stuff wanted to kind of bring up before we kind of get into the technicals and then the questions from you guys. I wanted to let you know about some of the updates on the Sundial, because we have made some changes since we were originally kicked off with Project Catalyst way back at the start of the year. And the biggest one, and it's one I think a lot of people are actually quite happy about, is the fact that at Sundial, we are not going to have a token. There will be no Sundial token. It will instead just be denominated in Bitcoin, and obviously ADA under the hood. So no need for a new token, no need for worries about liquidity, because we are going to be a Bitcoin and ADA first project. It does change, obviously, some of our plans, but we actually think it's ultimately for the better. And a lot of this is coming out of conversations we were having with institutions, with Bitcoin Whale, even others in the Cardano community. Because you meet with Adam Beck, you meet with Michael Thaler, some of these other Bitcoin Maxers, the big guys, and they are Bitcoin purists through and through. The fact that you have a number of other like Bitcoin DeFi options, but they require other tokens. So you look at Babylon and Stack, they all require another token. Or CoreDAO, they're doing great stuff, but because they require a token, it limits their adoption by Bitcoiners. And this is something we wanted to avoid. We got to get out there, we got to speak their language, and we got to really wrap our hands and our arms around the Bitcoin narrative. And to that extent, it's also something we talked about yesterday and kind of made it public. And now you guys can all see it, because we launched a new website for Sundial Protocol. We've got some of the early rails that will be kind of leading eventually to the staking mechanism. So you guys can get into the website now and get a look and the feel for the culture and where we want to go with this. And it's worth pointing out that in that website, and same thing as when you look on the X page, it doesn't mention anywhere anything about Cardano directly. And we're doing this on purpose. Now, not everybody's going to love this, but the truth is we've got to know our target audience. We've got the Cardano family really in our corner, but we're not going to go out there just to sell to ourselves. We've got to be out there growing the pie, and we got to sell to Cardano people, Bitcoin people. And to that extent, we've got to lean into it. And so everything is branded around just being a Bitcoin project, and wanted to make that clear to the Cardano community. It's not out of like a place of, betrayal or anything like that. We just have to know what we're doing here. So similar to layer twos that you might see elsewhere, certainly on the Ethereum side of things, we've got our firm roots in Cardano, but we're looking abroad. We're looking at institutions. We're looking at Bitcoin miners. And we got to understand what they want to see. And so a lot of that is around Bitcoin and Bitcoin security. That's what we've done with the website, and that's how we're kind of branding ourselves as we kind of go forward. And now, actually, before I kind of ramble on too much, wanted to maybe see if, Sam, are you keen to get up and kind of talk about the website, what you've been building?
Sure. Yeah. I can totally talk about that. Yes, I did. I built out the website. And right now it's basically just informational. Some basic stuff there about what we're doing, what we're planning. But that is also where we're working on, as Sheldon mentioned, kind of some of the staking design and all of that. And so you'll see that coming up in the near future. You'll get to see some demos and stuff like that of the staking platform that we have built out. But yeah, really to give context for that, I think it might make sense to go over a little bit of like just the general design of how Sundial is going to work. Um, and the way that I guess I like to introduce this is there's really three components to Sundial. If you want to, like, as our target is to bring Bitcoin liquidity over and Bitcoin users over and have them just have the smoothest experience possible into DeFi. Obviously, the first component that you're going to need is the bridge. And so we're working with several different bridging teams right now, evaluating different bridges. And the idea is that as we look at these different bridges, we'll pick the winners, one, two, like we have planned out some smart infrastructure to basically enable us to select bridges, or enable users to select bridges depending on the use case. But right there, we're not really at that point where we're picking winners. We're still observing because there's the Cardinal Bridge, there's the work being done by the Fluid Tokens team. There's the work being done by the Bitcoin OS team, and so and several other teams are working on stuff that's similar and can maybe be applied here. So that's the first component. The second component is, of course, the layer two. That's where we're moving things to with these bridges, and that's going to enable a lot of that more simple functionality, and give us that good base to build the more advanced functionality on top of. Um, yeah, so that layer two is built on top of the Midgard framework. It's awesome to see Jonathan and George up here. Both of them have contributed to Midgard in meaningful ways, and so they might actually be able to answer some Midgard questions if you guys have them here. But we have, if for the most part, at least for the MVP, we have the Midgard layer two framework with a few key divergences. And then the third component is the actual like yield platform, or the user platform. I don't know, can think about the right term for that, maybe the glue layer, but basically this is the tool that we're building on top of all of this that really provides that smooth user experience. And it's divided into a bunch of layers, but the idea is, right now, coming back to that website, a user can come into the website and they can, in a one-stop like portal, they can bridge their liquidity over from Bitcoin onto the Sundial layer two, and then have a whole suite of yield instruments that they have available to them. And similar to like when you're picking your 401k, you might have a bunch of different um, places that you can invest your Bitcoin in, and you can select from there what yield instruments you want. Some of those you may need to lock your funds. Some of them we may be able to do fully liquid staking for. Um, but the idea is basically that you can customize the risk to reward ratio at a bunch of in a very, very like uh, minute detail if you want. Or we'll probably offer some presets available for the people who just want that kind of ETF option of give me everything and show me the what you recommend. Yeah, so that's I guess the core overview there. That is probably enough to get started on, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sam. It's a great overview. And yeah, it's good to get into basically all three streams, right? Be it like the layer two there, the bridges, and then also like the yield platform. So it's a question that comes up quite a lot, and it's like, where are you getting your yield from? It's something that comes up in conversations all the time with investors, with institutions. And we actually have a number of partners who are already signed up to be working with us to do yield generation. And so some of the yield generation is quite innovative, and other parts are unbelievably traditional. They're fairly straightforward. And so, as Sam was mentioning, we want to, with Sundial, have a platform that allows people to kind of come in and pick their level of acceptable risk and reward for themselves and what they would be most comfortable with. Of course, like, you do see out there in the market those who claim to offer 15 or 20% return on their Bitcoin, but there is an understanding that that is a pretty risky move to do, quite risky. And for many Bitcoiners and many institutions, it's an unacceptably high amount of risk to reward. And so people sometimes are talking to us and asking if we can just kind of settle on a smaller percentage. And so we've spent a lot of time doing research and meeting with all of these other various protocols and the other offerings, and kind of come to and understand that we're going to have to provide a suite. We can't just kind of have one, but we will provide, I think, the what would be, dare say, the best in market, because we can take the best of what's worked with Cardano, be it the non-custodial staking, and look to have that be like our baseline offering. And so for all of you guys who are maybe unaware, there is probably the best current non-custodial staking protocol, which is Babylon, and they actually pay out a return of 0.4%. So it's a pretty small return, but it's non-custodial, and that's what people like. And it's also, there for the Bitcoin maxis. It's all orange and yellow. Um, and in doing so, they've actually created a lot of traction there. So they've actually had, I think now it's between $4 and $5 billion worth of Bitcoin that is staked to Babylon. A lot of the rewards are backed up by their token, but even still, it's pretty commendable. And so we believe we can beat that offering and beat it pretty substantially using, as like Sam was mentioning, the various tech solutions that we've got through our partners and that we're building ourselves and that are kind of natively inherited by the Cardano side of things. And so we hope, and I was talking about this with the group last night, but I'll echo it again. I would like to see 12 months out from now that we, as the Cardano ecosystem, are putting to work Bitcoin at such a capacity that we are having, at a minimum, about $1 billion worth of Bitcoin locked up and staking and being involved in DeFi. It might be ambitious, but I think we can certainly do it looking at the landscape of competitors. We've got to get out there and get building now. So that has been what we are doing. Um, yeah, before I kind of turn it over to questions and kind of like open up the floor for everybody to chat, I wanted to also mention some of the things that we're doing in the next little while, because we have not been sitting on our hands. We've been all over the world as well, trying to get awareness of what we're doing. So beyond just the Catalyst funds, we're also doing some fundraising. And so it's been really interesting to get out there and talk to VCs. So I spent time with Draper University there on the West Coast in the Bay Area, meeting a lot of different VCs, spent time traveling through Europe, the rest of the United States, and then have gone to numerous Bitcoin events around the world. Going to be going to Bitcoin Asia in Hong Kong next week, was in BTC Prague a few weeks ago, and Bitcoin Vegas before that. And so it's been really, really useful to be able to kind of get out there and be one of the, I guess you could say, kind of like vanguard Cardano projects to get out and talk to West Coast Silicon Valley VCs, because there is a lot of truth to the fact that, and I think maybe everybody in this room will know this, that usually when you think about VCs and Cardano, they don't really go together all that well. There's been some animosity there. A lot of VCs admittedly will come to me and say, like, point me to the most successful Cardano project that has earned substantial returns for their investors. It's a hard thing for myself or any other Cardano founder to kind of answer. And so we've been trying to, focus in on what we can be doing and how we can be improving upon Cardano and the various projects that are building here. I think we've actually been making a lot of traction there. So in the coming weeks, there'll be probably more announcements around early stage investments that a number of Cardano projects are going to be getting from those on the West Coast and Silicon Valley and from elsewhere. And so I think the tides are turning. We're going to have some narrative shifts. And there's going to be a lot more positivity there. And so something to be very optimistic about. But then, back to like events. It's important for events to be happening. It's incredibly important for projects to get out there. I know there's been a lot of discussions around the return on investment for the ecosystem to fund Cardano events around the world. It is divisive. It's not an easy thing, but as someone who literally travels nonstop going to these events around the world, I'm maybe biased, but I do believe that it is incredibly important. And it's something that we've been doing at Sundial nonstop. People don't know you kind of exist unless you're out there at hackathons, shaking hands, meeting people, talking to investors. You got to prove that you're real. And we might win all of the votes online when it comes to Cardano polls, but a lot of VCs have never shook hands with a Cardano founder. And so we got to change that. And so I encourage all of you guys, if it's within your capacity to kind of get out there and meet people in real life and talk about Bitcoin and Cardano and Sundial, get out there and do it. Make yourself heard. So I think maybe that's kind of it for me in terms of kind of like updates on kind of like where we're at as a project, but very keen to kind of turn it over. If the guys here, I'm thinking about, say, George or Jonathan or anybody else want to kind of step up and talk about what you guys have been working on, say, like the Midgard side of things. If not, we can get right into kind of a discussion. Any kind of questions, comments, be happy to kind of hear what you guys are thinking and the latest questions you might have for us.
Yeah, maybe I'll hop in. So I'm here in the space to represent the Midgard project, which is an upstream dependency of Sundial. Briefly speaking, Midgard is an optimistic rollup on Cardano. This means that we are able to improve significantly the throughput of transactions on Cardano by processing a lot of them off-chain. And we only post the block headers. So for the off-chain assembled blocks of transactions, we only post the block headers on L1. And then the optimistic part is where you let the block header sit on L1 for a little while, providing anybody out there with an opportunity to present a fraud proof. If that block has any issues inside of it, and then if the fraud proof is correct, you remove the block / whoever put it there and get a little reward for yourself for going through the trouble. And so the benefit of this is that you get, as I said, massive scalability gains, while not compromising on the security, because Midgard does not have its own separate consensus protocol between some small group of actors. Its consensus protocol is encoded as a suite of smart contracts on Cardano's L1, which means that Cardano's L1 security guarantees Midgard's consensus. So that, in a nutshell, is what Midgard's about. We've had lots of previous X Spaces and chats and videos about Midgard, as well as a very in-depth specification about it. So I don't think I need to do any more introduction about Midgard. And so I'm happy to dive more into the questions and answers and to contribute there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, George. Great to have the Midgard context there and how it all ties together for Sundial. But are there any questions? And so, feel free to kind of either put up your hand or just kind of step up as a speaker if you'd like to kind of jump up and have a word. Yeah, Vantor, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, how are you?
Very good, very good. Can hear you. Yep.
Awesome. I'm just curious as to what your, I guess, thought process was behind not releasing a token, as it's always so hyped for the latest protocol to put out their token, and what your kind of thought process was on not doing that.
Yeah, no, so it's a very good question. And so it's down to a few different reasons, because actually there wasn't just like a single reason where it was like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just skip it for this or that. It was actually a number. And I should actually come out and say that like we haven't completely removed the idea of having a token in the future off the table completely. Like we might revisit it later on down the line, but for now, the idea is we will proceed without one. And so the rationale behind it, and I just mentioned there's a few, but some of the more pressing ones, and I'll go through like a list here. One of the more pressing ones is actually the cost of launching a token. To do proper tokenomics, to do proper token listings, to go and make sure that your token is supported by market makers, by all of these other various partners, it's a very expensive process. And we had pretty high ambitions for what we wanted the potential Sundial token to be and what it could do. And knowing that and having spoken with a number of these market makers and these exchanges, the prices that they came back to us with were just insane. So just so you guys know, to do like a tier one listing, right, with Binance, there's a very particular pathway to get into Binance. You could just really pay up front in 6 or 12 months in advance of your project launching $2 million, but it's got to be a really advanced process that you need to go and spend time holding the hands of the Binance listing team, and then you've got to spend a lot of money to do it. And it's not the most, impactful, I guess you could say, for a project such as ours to want to deviate into that. And we've seen issues where tokens get listed on Binance and they don't do particularly well. And so that was some of our thinking, and we realized that also, as I was mentioning before, there are many in the Bitcoin space who do not want another token. They're not keen on it. We've seen it with, say, like Babylon and Stacks or Cordell or others, where they'll have their own token, and it limits their adoption by the Bitcoin community. There's also, of course, and this is another really big thing for us with Sundials, we want to have the protocol be as acceptable to retail community and also institutions. And there are many jurisdictions where institutions cannot engage with new tokens because they don't know the legal clarity about it. So they just won't engage with it at all. If we have no token, we actually are much easier. We can just say we are really a Bitcoin project, and allows us to go and interact with banks, with insurance companies, with many others without really the concerns of some of those legal questions. So that's another really big reason. So yeah, that's kind of like a summary. There's a few more, but I don't want to blabber on all day about that. But yeah, I hope that helps kind of answer a bit of your question there, Angela.
Let me jump in here. Obviously, I was not involved in the Sundial decision-making process about whether or not Sundial would have a token. But as a protocol architect in general in Cardano for multiple projects, and in particular Midgard, here's kind of my view on if and when a given project should consider creating a new token for itself. First of all, I think you should never rush to it, because from a protocol design point of view, as soon as you have a token, you have to then figure out a way to, for that token to somehow be involved in your protocol, like in your smart contracts, or, it has to have some role within your on-chain application. And that is a huge constraint on how you can design your dApp. And particularly when your dApp is ambitious in terms of like what it's trying to accomplish on chain, having some token from early on that you have to slot in is hugely restricting in terms of the ways that you can pursue your objective. So I would never recommend rushing into it. And the time when you should consider doing a token is when you realize that, from the design that has emerged of you meeting the objective, or at least one of the kind of designs, it seems like a token is necessary, right? Like, I'll give you an example. A stablecoin has to have it, like a stablecoin project has to have its own separate token, because ADA can't be a stablecoin, kind of by definition, right? And so in that kind of design, you realize fairly early that, okay, I need to issue a token like this, right? Similarly, for some projects, eventually they get to a point where they need to have their own governance, and so they may decide that, okay, we've designed our protocol, we figured out how it works, and we also figured out how we want governance to work within it. And it seems like the governance mechanism that we have chosen should be a stake-based, governance decision-making process, like communal decision-making process, right? In that case, it's time to think about having a governance token, maybe issuing it to the community, right? But even then, you have to be very careful about it, because one thing that isn't appreciated is that, for example, Cardano, ADA is, in addition to being like the staking token for block production, it's also the governance token. And Charles IOG and the founding entities, they put a lot of effort in the early days to try to make ADA disperse as widely as possible across the world, right? Obviously, you'll still have a power curve distribution of the token, but it's much better than most dApps governance token distribution. So I think for dApps, when they're considering the governance token, they should also think about how to make sure that the governance token doesn't get too concentrated in a few people's hands, right? And I think that also has legal implications, because some jurisdictions they look at the distribution, they look at how concentrated it is, and based on that, they might decide that, oh, this token is actually a security, because certain people have way too much power over the governance of the token. So I would always tread carefully when it comes to releasing tokens for projects.
Yeah, like spot on, George. Thank you very much for that. It's exactly our thinking. I see, Rob, you got your hand up. Before I go to you, Rob, just one last point on this topic. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of our thinking on this, besides just all of the mentioned rationales for it, it was also important for some of the investors we've been speaking to as well. A lot of the decision making and thoughts on this, the shift away from having a token, came from our time in the Draper University program. So actually, it was very interesting talking to investors, and they made a very good point that normally, once you have a token that is out there, in addition to equity in your company, almost all value accrues to the token over the equity play. And so it means for a lot of projects that go when they launch a token early on, great for fundraising from a community and to get your tokens out there in circulation, but it means that you will struggle to get any kind of equity investment later on. And it's hard to get investors to kind of come on board when your token's already shot out. People have you've blown your load, you can't really put the gun back together. And so the suggestion was that, in addition to all the points that George mentioned and I mentioned, you have to tread very carefully with any kind of token play, because you only have one token launch. You can only do it one time. And if you stumble for any reason, it's kind of game over. So, I shouldn't say it's game over. It's just very difficult. We've seen projects come back from bad token launches, but it's very rare. So, didn't want to even get into that. Any case, so Rob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Sheldon and the team. Sheldon, I know that I need to disclose I'm assisting with this project quite actively, and was part of that decision as well on the token. But let's talk mainly now about what are the main steps that you're going to be doing over the next couple of months, because one of the big things, obviously, on the radar is the investment round. And the investment round unlocks a lot of resources, which allows you to accelerate this project. With the investment round, are you able to say, what you want to get from that, and And basically, what are the types of resources you think you're going to need to be able to get this project into mainnet, and then obviously then that 12-month target of around $1 billion active on chain?
Yes, well, good question, Rob. Putting me on the spot here in front of everybody, but yeah, it's a very good question. So we are now in a pretty exciting spot as a project, as a protocol, where Sundial is now getting into the acceleration phase of development. So as we've talked about, we've got the funding from Catalyst because it was like a large ticket-sized partnership category in Catalyst. We had additional scrutiny and oversight, and it was quite strenuous. It took quite a lot of time to get all the milestones approved, and there's a lot of like checking to make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. But we've got it together, and so we've got some of that early allocations of ADA that helped kind of grease the wheels. We've now also, as Rob was mentioning, and as I mentioned before, we've got now outside private investment, and we're looking to do more of that in the coming weeks and months ahead. And we think all of this is going to be quite exciting. It accelerates us into a pretty dynamic situation where we're going to be hiring. We've actually got some people starting September 1st. We're going to be partnering up more closely with some of our existing partners and really locking in commercial agreements and getting more work done. We'll have some early mock-ups of the staking platform that are going to go live and for people to play around with. Um, Obviously, you guys are probably all familiar with the amazing work that all of the guys at Anastasia Labs and elsewhere have been doing with Midgard, and there's been like the tech demos there. We're going to have a similar tech demo for Sundial, also coming down the pipeline. And then, as we were hoping, we'll aim to have a test net near the end of the year. All things kind of ready to go, and with that, we hope we can get people to be building, kind of come out and start to begin to deploy various dApps and other things on the Sundial testnet. So that'll be really exciting. It already kind of stresses me out in advance, but I'm pumped for it. And one of the nice things, and maybe this is something that the other guys can get into more details about, those who've been working on Midgard, there's a lot of overlapping functionality. If you've got a protocol that works or a dApp that works on mainnet Cardano, there's only going to be a small amount of tweaking that will be required to have it be working and compatible on Midgard/Sundial. So the tech lift will be very light for everybody who's already on Cardano. We want to get these guys thinking about how your Cardano project can also be a Bitcoin project. And that's something I really want to stress to everybody. To try to get your creative juices flowing. We've already partnered up with, I think, a few dozen various projects in Cardano, and there's going to be more coming. We just announced one with CSwap not that long ago, actually earlier this week, and they're here in the chat. So hey, CSwap guys. But yeah, because we believe very firmly that the future is going to be built around real world assets, around Bitcoin and yield and DeFi strategies there. And so that partnership with CSwap is going to be very instrumental in tackling that particular niche of Web3. And it's only going to grow more and more important as we go forward. So I hope that kind of answers your question there, Rob. There's a lot to unpack there, but it's a very, very exciting time. So we've got a lot going on and a lot to expect.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Sheldon. No, specifically, though, on the investment round, we are looking to raise capital for you to achieve this aim, and also, as you said, multiple projects that are very keen to support the project as well, which is great right from the outset. In terms of the resources, the resources that are starting in September, they're going to be developers, aren't they? So you're focusing a lot on the development side, but then there's also the operational side and other sides that you're going to be focusing on, security and compliance and other areas that we have to put in place. So where would you say that the focus is yourself, or what you think in terms of the focus, in terms of what's needed, and then moving into post the investment round?
Well, I believe our focus is still kind of squarely upon getting the right resources in place for rolling out the tech. I believe between everybody on the Sundial team, through our network, through our partnerships, will be able to kick things into a high gear when it comes to marketing a little bit later on. But I don't want us to run ahead of ourselves. It's important when talking with institutional partners, with potential investors and large users and others, they want to see something. It's got to be a bit more tangible. They got to put their hands on it and to engage with it. And until we are comfortable and we actually have something to engage with, my focus is really on the tech side of things. We've got to get these early demos together. We've got to get the testnet ready. There is going to be, of course, a major need to have people go out and to join the Sundial team and to be representatives, be community members, also salespeople, because we want this to be a business that runs on Web3, not just like a Web3 product or project, I should say. So it's I hope, a bit more of a change in how we approach the industry. We want to take it a bit more professionally, a little bit more seriously. But it just means that we've got to be very dialed in at the beginning and be professional all the way through. And so I think we've done that thus far. And some of the choices we've made, such as shying away from doing a token now, and instead of going for any kind of like hypes here or there, fairly like low key, because we want to just begin to deliver. We want to show you guys that we've got some awesome stuff being cooked up, and we'll take it step from step that way. And then to your point there, Rob, just so everybody knows, what we're looking to do in the next while, we want to raise a few $1 million. Not a whole lot, just a few $1 million from various investors, and then we'll be able to use that to further unlock marketing to take it to the next level. Because, as we all know, you can build something amazing, but there's no guarantee that they will come, that you'll actually have users come. And we've got to kind of be cognizant of that and be prepared to, once we have something working that we think is great, shout about it from the rooftops. So that is what I would say is our list of priorities. But any other speakers or people who maybe have a question or... Dantor, you got your hand up again?
Give me 2 seconds. So question. I guess, I don't know, answer this however you may. One of my favorite bridging protocols is Rosenbridge. I've used it many times to bridge Ergo from Ergo protocol to Cardano and back and forth. And they have a very smart team of talented people. And I just want to know if you guys are planning to work with them on their products or collaborate with them, seeing as they are a UTXO blockchain that is allowing Bitcoin already to travel between other UTXO chains.
So it's a good question. And so Sam had been mentioning a number, basically a name drop list of the various partners. And right now we have no exclusivity deals. And so we're talking with everybody, including like early discussions with Rosenbridge. Even like OneChain, I'll be talking with Temu from OneChain tomorrow. And so, yes, like all of this is on the table, because our whole proposition is we are not going to be building the bridge ourselves. We are working with partners who are providing that tech solution, and we'll be plugging them in. We think this is going to be a very dynamic space. It'll be very competitive, but we've already got some working solutions out there, as you were saying, with Rosenbridge. And so keen to work with them and get this together. And then we also have to be looking to, being collaborative with various other like innovators, because I know Rosenbridge and OneChain and these other guys, where they have working products today, they're not just sitting on their hands, they're also further iterating. And there's a lot of other competitors, be it with the Charms, Bitcoin OS, Fluid Tokens, the Cardinal Bridge with IOG. So it's a very dynamic spot. And Sam was mentioning us being careful about picking winners, and it's something we're mindful of. But we want to allow the layer 2 architecture there to be open to allow for anybody to plug in. Currently, similar to how it works on Cardano today. And so any bridge can kind of be built and plug in. And so we want to encourage that interoperability going forward. it then does bring me to like another topic, and it is something that it wasn't a core part of what we looked to build out at the start, but it's now something we're aware of that is going to be very important, and that is making sure we have a nice liquidity pool of Bitcoin that is able to be interoperable across these bridges. And so we're building out a solution for that because we think it's going to be important. If we only have, like One Chain Bridge or Rosen Bridge Bitcoin, and they're maybe not interoperable with each other, we might have a problem there. So we want to be able to make sure that you can actually have liquidity solutions in place day one to help with making this protocol the best it could possibly be.
Mentioning how, like
So hopefully that helps. Mine should.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to tack onto that. Like mentioning how, like we may pick a winner or two for the bridges, but it's still like an open, decentralized layer 2. We're not ruling any of this with an iron fist, right? And so we'll have this yield suite that we have available for users, and we'll have these bridges that are available with this like tailored experience. But at the end of the day, it's still a decentralized protocol, and so like that goes beyond just the bridges of like we're not excluding apps, and just in general it's an open system, right? Same as you have with any other blockchain. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And talking about the liquidity providers, talking about the bridges, there's actually a lot of different ways that you'll be able to get involved in Sundial, and that's something that I wanted to bring up here. Of like, we have lots of different roles that you can be involved in decentralizing the protocol and making it more of an open protocol there. Probably the obvious ones there are the node operators, right? Same as any other blockchain, you need node operators to run. And we'll likely also have some bridge operators. Like, again, this is like there's still a fair amount of uncertainty around the bridging, as we are looking into, what bridges to use. But so at least some of these will need their own bridge operators. And at the very least, we'll have this service that I mentioned for selecting bridges for users. And so, yes, bridge operators will be incorporated. We also have what's called a watcher, which is not an entirely new concept. In fact, Vanter, you're probably familiar with this from the Rosen Bridge. But the watcher is basically if you have the operators, which are taking a proactive interaction with the blockchain, a watcher is more of a reactive interaction. They're watching for things for particular events that might come up and responding in a certain way. And so a great example of that are the fraud provers, right? The fraud provers will be watching the chain to see if there's a fraudulent block, and then they can submit a fraud proof. There's also what we call facilitators. One of the really cool things about Midgard is these these blocks are all fully deterministic, and the fraud proving is fully deterministic, which means even before a transaction has fully settled on the layer 1, you can still see that it is valid. And what that allows is for a service to go in between for deposits and withdrawals between the layer 1 and layer 2. And that's what a facilitator does, basically, is they watch for these transactions that they are able to calculate with this deterministic system, that those transactions will go through, and they can accelerate the finality of those transactions by providing their own liquidity for those deposits and withdrawals. And so that's another example, and we've got a few other, but all told, that watcher system will be modular, and all told, between the watchers and the operators and the other roles, we have, I think, 7 different roles that we have spec'd out. So if you're interested in running your own services, maybe you're an SPO or just a technical person, you've got an AWS subscription that you're not doing anything with, like, keep an eye out for that, because that's a great way to get involved in the protocol, and we will need those people.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that, Sam. I'll have some additional context. But yeah, well, so we are coming close to the end here. We've got basically like 5 minutes left. I don't know if anybody has a last, question, comment, statement you want to air out before we wrap up. Okay, not seeing much, but well, this has been great. As I mentioned at the very start of this, oh, actually, okay, C-Swap. I don't know who's behind the account, but C-Swap, come on up.
Hey, Sheldon, it's John Kravitz here. Great to speak with you again. Uh, One of the things that I was really excited about was it seemed like there was kind of a competition around Bitcoin DeFi on Cardano, just a few months back. And then, one of the things that really impresses me about you is just kind of your ability to like bring everybody together. Under like one shared vision. So if you could just talk a little bit about that before ending the space, I think that that would be a good way to end things off.
Yes, well, thank you very much, John. Thank you, and it was great to meet you there in person in Vegas. I guess no more than it was like a week and a half ago now. But yeah, well, so and it's a great question. I have in my time here in Cardano been very privileged to have met with so many awesome community members and founders. So those of you guys who don't know, I was previously head of the Cardano ecosystem with Emergo. I had worked previously to get Intersect stood up, worked at IOG previously. And so in those roles, I was very privileged to meet a lot of awesome people. And I was also able to, in that position, those positions, I should say, see also some of the areas where we could maybe improve a little bit. And I think one of the main things is getting beyond just sometimes the tribalism and the stone throwing that we have on X, and realize that there's a lot of really cool projects that are probably better off collaborating with each other than being all in out competitors. I think competitiveness is essential. We need to have like the best rise to the top without a doubt. But I do believe there's often cases where we have people who are maybe not plugged in with each other, and they're kind of building the same product in parallel but in isolation from each other. And if they had just kind of like known about each other and been better synced up, they could actually collaborate together for a better product that maybe goes to market a little bit faster. And so this is something that had previously bothered me quite a bit, but I now have the opportunity to really kind of put a lot of that like thought into practice to kind of actually round up the various founders, the various projects, protocols, dApps, community members, and start to work in concert towards a larger goal. And I think we've been really quite successful in this. And so it's great to see some competition still happening, right? Like it's great to have like Bitcoin OS competing with IOG for some of the bridge solutions there. I think there's going to be much more competition. There's going to be a lot of competition around the various dApps and DEXs. Obviously, ongoing competition with stablecoins. That will be a forever competition. And there's nothing wrong with that competition. I'm very keen on it. But there are some things that we're probably better off syncing on. And so as much as I possibly can as like one human and something I'm trying to disseminate within the rest of the Sundial team, we've got to be talking with people on a regular basis. And this kind of comes back to meeting up in person at events, but then also having time for one-on-one calls with various founders and community and talking about what we're doing, what we want to do, and hearing and listening what are other people building. And so, for example, yeah, John with C-Swap, you guys are building some awesome stuff with plans for staking and with RWAs, and we're going to be doing this together. And awesome work being done with bridges, and so we're working with the guys for charms. And so there's a whole lot of different things that we're kind of putting our hands in, and that will not stop. So it's an exciting time, and yeah, really privileged to be in this community with all of you guys. It's still early days, but it's very, very promising. And so I guess we'll maybe look to kind of wrap it up here and just kind of, yeah, thank all of you for joining this space and for coming along for this kind of standalone Sundial AMA. It's the first one we've done like this. We're normally partnered up with other people, and that partnership means a lot. And so I think we'll be getting back to doing a lot more of those partnership joint spaces. So look out for more of those in the next little while. We'll have, I think, another individual Sundial AMA as we get closer to the testnet, because we're going to have some awesome stuff to go through. And we probably then will want to do something similar to what Charles does with the kind of the YouTube AMAs, because we're going to want to take everybody visually through the whole platform. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we're at the hour. I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time out of your days to be here. You're awesome. And let's continue to build Cardano and Sundial together. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.